But let's talk about leadership. Today's program, I just really want to concentrate specifically on leadership. Now, there are great leaders around, but a lot of times what leaders would do, especially in our country and around the world, I found it so often with leaders, they would say good things up until they're ready to do what they're supposed to do. And in most cases, God woke me up and he was telling me a lot of stuff, and we were talking, God and I were talking, we have a conversation. And one of the things, of course, he's given me a lot of notations, and one of the things that I'm going to skip to and go straight into is educating the next leg. Now, I would have done a lot of network marketing businesses, and leg basically is an illustration of a new business, a new concept, a new mindset, a new establishment. So I'm talking about the new generation, the next generation of young people. How do we educate that next generation? Because that next generation, we were able to rise up a bionic generation. That's what God is basically saying. It's a bionic generation. It's smarter, but not necessarily very brighter or intelligent generation. It's workable, but not willing to work hard for anything. We have developed dreams, but no visionary or no vision is there with that new generation as well. We can go on and on and on based on that next generation, but that next generation, let's go back through the basics. We have developed a bionic generation. What does that basically mean? This generation is all technically savvy. They're all about machines, gadgetry, and everything else. Bionic is half man, half machine. So the whole basics of this is that the younger generation is half machine, half human. Most of them are spending more time, more and more time in front of technology than the human aspect. You put the youth to really communicate as talk, they hardly can do that properly. So we've lost a generation to a bionic kind of generation. They have become smarter but not brighter. What does that mean? They become technically savvy, they're witty, they're smart, but you know what? No reasoning power is there. Young people are not necessarily very brighter as a generation. Where you found the old generation, the generation before this, the generation that is now between the age range of 35 to about 50 to 65 years old, you found those generations within that gap is more of a brighter generation where they're smart, they're witty, they can think, they have the thinking ability that solve things out. This younger generation don't want to solve anything out. They just want everything to happen now. So the scenario is, it's more of a spoon feeding generation whereby they always need somebody to keep telling them things or coach them on. They don't have the willpower or the stability to make that decision or the drive for themselves. So you found the generation that becomes smarter but not necessarily brighter. You become a generation that literally is willing to work. You know, it's workable, but you know what? They don't work hard. So that means it's starting to rain and all that. So forgive the other set of noise. I know the camera, if it moves and all that, people are just trying to close in the windows. What we're gonna do is not necessarily close the curtains, but we'll just pull the windows in so we can still get a light. So what we're gonna show you here basically, with this new generation as well, we're going to be talking about, it's also going to be workable but not working hard. That means they don't know what it is to achieve stuff. They don't work hard to get stuff. They work but not working hard. Now, again, going back to the generation just before them, the generation in 35 to about 65 years old, which is in my generation, we're accustomed to working hard, where this generation is accustomed to working smart. But the reality of the smart work, it does not give the ownership. So what you find, again, when the Bible talks about you becoming servants, moving away from servanthood to becoming sons and daughters of the living God, what that means, you've got to earn your place to get your keep. So you've got to reach a place where now you discern and God is using you, but you're willing to work hard. You're willing to make the sacrifices that is necessary, that is needed for your time, your generation, to make the difference, to stand out, to be different, to be known, to be established through the things of God. Because God is calling us to humbleness, and that's hard work. God is calling us to completeness, and that's hard work. That's really tough. So the reality is, when the Bible talks about a man's eyes being single, that his entire body be filled with light, we're talking about resisting the lust of the flesh. That's not just a joke around the park. That is tough. That is some serious material that you gotta let off. Because guess what? If you can't be trusted now to stand with the little temptations of what life is, when God really puts you up on a pinnacle, that's where the trouble is. That's why you find most ministries and ministers, when God has called you into greatness, what you find happening in most of the situations and times, most people fall to the weaknesses of flesh. We're seeing around the world churches are falling because of sexual immorality, homosexuality, lesbianism, all kinds of stuff going on in churches, from the leadership right down to the pew. And I learned something years ago, because I was in network marketing, like I said earlier. I used to be in a company called Amway Global. Powerful company, got one of the teachings. Now, one of the things that Amway Global would have taught me resonated in my head and stayed that way. It says, literally, if you're not making a difference with somebody else's life, then you're not worth living. That is so true. Now, Miles Monroe would have said something that's really cool, and something that resonated in my mind, my heart, and my soul. It's deep within my spirit, and that speaks literally all about is this. If you as a leader are not raising up other leaders, John C. Maxwell said it too, if you're not raising up and establishing other leaders with you, then really and truly, what are you here for? You see, 90% of the church don't even know their purpose yet. So why were you created? That's the first question you need to ask. You know what? I'm always keep developing and improving. This is an old book from Miles Monroe, The Principle and Power of Vision, but I'm reading it back again. This is one of the most powerful books, I believe, that is on the market. Because in this book, it has a major establishments of lots of truths. Now, what you need to be able to do as a person, as a believer, as somebody who's going to establish themselves for Christ, the first thing you got to be able to do is establish Christ within you. That means there's no you establishing in this thing. That means you got to put you to death. What it means to crucify the flesh is that you got to go against what the flesh wants. Now that's a battle in itself. It's not just going to wake up tomorrow morning and say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. Some people, you're a miracle to do it. But I truly don't believe that you don't do it. Because as I was explained to you, deliverance, it sometimes goes through a process. I learned this from Cindy Trim, and I'm going to use this example. Just as a woman being pregnant, you know what? I can use the egg, and we can use so many different types of terminologies of leadership. But I'm going to use the delivery and the egg method. Now let me use the egg for an example, and I'll bring it back to delivery. When an egg is there, beautiful breakfast. Oh my God, beautiful breakfast. Beautiful egg sandwich. You can make so many different things with eggs. But you know what? If you put the egg through the real process, you can't make an egg sandwich anymore. That's where KFC comes happy, because now that egg becomes something totally different over a period of time. Now let me show you something. When you start to grow out of your situation and you become bigger than your environment, you got to break out of it. And that's exactly what happens to the yoke. The yoke starts to breathe a different life. And guess what? It starts to establish a head and wings and feet and feathers, and it starts to break out of its environment. What am I talking about? When certain things hit your life, as a leader, you've got to be able to grow above your environment. Listen, if you're in an environment where you're the smartest one, then you got to change your environment.